Now, the author makes a big deal about transistors, these tiny and increasingly small electronic components, and we even mentioned them earlier, actually in the first day of class, when we were trying to find some difference between something that's electrical and something that's electronic. And we said, well, one way to describe it is that it's something that's electronic is using transistors. Well, a transistor is a small and very simple but very useful electrical component. This next video is going to illustrate how it works in a couple of different useful ways. One way to summarize it is that a transistor kind of acts as an electrically powered switch, or maybe an electrical powered knob where there's continuous variation between the maximum and the minimum. And this is kind of an extension of, remember when we were talking about the telegraph, where if we were in one room and we would have a switch connected to a buzzer and we could close that circuit and make the buzzer sound, we could just as easily add several miles of cable between that switch and that buzzer, and I could sit in my office and push my switch, and you could sit in your room and hear the buzzer go off, and that could be a way for us to communicate long distance. Well, transistors break another barrier of switching, not the barrier of distance, but the barrier of power. You may remember a few times when we talked about electronic instruments so far, like the telharmonium was basically a powerhouse. It was an electrical generator because we didn't have amplifiers. We weren't able to make a small signal large. We just had to start with this huge amount of power and have it create a loud signal. So what a transistor does is something like this. It's a varying switch. And so here's our transistor in the middle here, and it's acting like a control valve. We're giving it a big power source, a big steady power source, but it's being controlled by this control valve. Well, what's going to control it? Well, the cool thing about a transistor is it's a switch or a varying knob that can be controlled by something else electrical, other switches, or maybe the electrical version of a sound coming in. So we can have our weak little sound input coming in here and use it to determine how to fade up and down our power source, and then we get a very loud copy of our original. So keep that in mind as you watch this next video that's explaining how transistors work. It's not focusing on the audio aspect of it, but it gives you some other illustrations that will be helpful.